due to a sardine and shipping problem. There was an embargo on sardines imposed by the government of Norway, and we Americans liked our sardines 100 years ago, so there had to be some way, some forum for us to discuss continuing our sardine eating. As I was preparing my comments this morning, I realized I've never, and I do quite a bit of presentations and introductions, I've never actually had a presentation or an introduction where I talk about sardines in the first 60 seconds. So that's a great byproduct of being associated with this project. Speaking of age, this chapter of the Norwegian-American Chamber of Commerce is about 3.5 years old. So we are in the toddler stage. And last year, around this time, quite a few of us were sitting around kind of wondering who we were going to be when we grew up, what our vision and mission were going to be. And we decided to engage a team of students from the Graduate School of Sport, Tourism, and Hospitality Management here at Temple to help us look into this challenge. And we asked them to look into what types of opportunities might exist between Norway and Philadelphia to increase bilateral trade. They started on that project, and I'm looking at them, one of them right now, so thank you for being here. They started that project last September and presented us a very rich and detailed information-laden report in December. And that's why we're here today. We are really excited to share the findings of this report, and we are interested in hearing your feedback and thoughts on those findings as it relates to implementation and next steps. The first portion of this session will be a discussion around actually more of a presentation of the key findings and insights that this report uncovered. And then for the next part of the meeting, we will have a facilitated panel discussion where we will rely on subject matter experts' opinions from Norway and California and Philadelphia. And at that part of the session, we do want that to be interactive, so people in Philadelphia, you can certainly ask questions at that point in time. We also want participation from those of you attending virtually. So when we start that piece of the discussion, I will let you know how you can send us in questions via text and chat. I'm going to close with my opening comments so we can dive into the meat of this presentation today. And I am going to turn it over to our next speaker, who is going to welcome you to Temple. He is the Associate Dean and a Professor at the Graduate School of Sports, Tourism, and Hospitality Management at Temple University. We've worked together in the past. I'm very happy to see him again. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Aubrey Kent.
Thank you very much, Tess. It is wonderful to be here this morning, and I'm thrilled to welcome you here on the campus in Philadelphia, and I'm happy to say good morning and good afternoon to those of you who are joining us virtually as well. Here at STHM, we're very proud to live in a city that has vibrant industries that represent our school, but we're also thrilled to give our students the opportunity to advantage themselves of the industry connections that we make and bring industry to life for them. And so this project is really an example of that best of both worlds, where we can have a learning opportunity by examining challenges from the industry, but also provide value for people and organizations who are looking to us to dive into some research that they either have neither the time nor the resources to engage in. So what I want to do quickly now is introduce to you and thank the project team. As Tess said, they spent a semester in the fall diving into some of the challenges that were outlined to them. And you can see the student team here. I saw we just walked in, and Yinji are over there. Say hello, everyone. Thank you both for being here. They had 3 colleagues who you can see on the slides. They were led by Bill Garriman, who I believe is joining us but is not necessarily here yet. The project team leader is here, Andrew Lovell, who is also the school's associate director for industry relations and is the lead conduit for many of these industry projects. And then, of course, Tess, you're familiar with, who is managing the project along the way. So I want to thank all of those involved, and I want to thank the Chamber as well for allowing us the opportunity to provide you with some of these insights. And I look forward to continuing the engagement as Tess said, the organization continues to grow up and go through adolescence to maturity. We're thrilled to be partners in this journey, and we hope that we can be a resource for you as you experience growth and opportunities in the future. So now it's really my pleasure to introduce the main portion of our morning. Frode Skjærsum is the president of the Norwegian-American Chamber of Commerce Philadelphia chapter, and so I will bring him up now without further ado.
Thank you, Aubrey. It's a great pleasure for me to be here and see all of you being present, both in person and virtually. Today, we represent the unveiling of the report that was commissioned by the Norwegian-American Chamber of Commerce, the Philadelphia chapter, for the purpose of identifying opportunities to increase bilateral trade between Norway and Greater Philadelphia. This report will also guide us to build a business model to work well with Norwegian and US-based businesses, increasing the awareness of Norwegian commerce and technology in Greater Philadelphia, as well as promoting Greater Philadelphia's brand in Norway. So I want to, again, thank for everyone who's made this possible, extending my thanks to the project team again, and as well as recognizing the people and the companies that also have made this possible, Philly Shipyard, the BDO, Blank Rome, and Brightback. And also very, very pleased of having representatives from 3 of these companies, Philly Shipyard and BDO and Blank and Rome, in our panel today. We're very excited about that. They have shown great support throughout this whole process, and they continue to do so. So we're very grateful for that. So I would also like to thank everyone who's attending virtually and online. And I believe personally this report is really worth sharing and to discuss both the findings and also some of the recommendations. First of all, it's because the Temple team has done an outstanding job in terms of applying professional research methodology and developing strategies and tactical approaches. The second reason is that we want to involve you all, as stakeholders, to critique the findings and help us deploy some of these recommendations into the marketplace. When we look at the reasons why, Tess was talking a little bit about the background for this report, but the reasons why we were doing this is because we thought this was a good opportunity, and we thought the timing was right. As fact as we were a young chapter, we could set our own course, we could stake our own course, and we thought, why not just hone in on the mission of NACC to start with, to facilitate business relationship between Norway and the US? And why would we just focus first on our region and see what we can do between our region and Norway? We looked at 3 drivers. The first factor that came into play was, and being totally transparent here, this is not just my personal opinion, but I also share this, that to be frank, the Chamber of Commerce model is a bit outdated. It was a model that worked well when we had companies that were willing to be patriotic beneficiaries, so to speak. Norwegian companies that had presence here in the United States, that had a lot of expats working here, and you had a lot of, let's say, patriotic reasons for supporting a chamber. Those reasons, with an increasingly globalized world and the globalization processes that are taking place, the origin of the country, quite frankly, isn't as important as it used to be. So what you end up with are products that are produced in dozen different places, regions in the world, companies that are co-owned by different groups all over the world. So the distinction between Norway and the rest of the world is not as clear as it was before, and hence there is less basis for support. So we need to come up with some new, better or newer arguments for why a Chamber of Commerce is relevant nowadays. So that was one of the drivers. Secondly, we had a report that came out in April last year from that was called the Greater Philadelphia Export Plan. And that pointed out some opportunities, but also challenges for Philadelphia as a region in terms of increasing in international exports and international trade. One of the points that the report made was that the ecosystem in Philadelphia and the greater Philadelphia region, although there are a lot of players, there wasn't so much good coordination. So we made a note out of that as well. And finally, there is an opportunity in Norway, we believe, with the plunging oil prices. Norway has been forced to look at a diversification in its economy and to not move away from oil and gas economy. That's still going to be an important cornerstone of Norwegian economy for decades to come, but to look at entering other industries, other areas, and put more effort into developing expertise, products, and companies in other areas such as tech, for instance. So we thought of these drivers as an opportunity to really explore this topic about enhancing trade between a specific region in the US and Norway. And hence we commissioned the report for that purpose. So the research methods utilized in this project include an environmental analysis to discover external factors which affect the bilateral trade between Norway and Greater Philadelphia. 2, questionnaires to determine the top challenges Norwegian businesses face when entering the US markets. And finally, best practices of the industrial peers to introduce superior services offered by other chambers of commerce into NACC's operations. So one of the external or environmental factors, here are some details about what I just mentioned. Some of the environmental factors is obviously what affect the oil prices have had on Norway's economy, and interestingly, how that has affected the investment activities for the past 10 years or so between Norway and the US. And as you can see, outwards investments has taken a plunge since the drop of the oil prices started to manifest itself more prominently around 2012. So lesser investments from the US into Norway because of the slowdown of the oil and gas economy. Another factor, and here is a manifestation of that as well, as far as Norwegian oil revenue represented from 2014 and 2015. Another factor is the relative trade deficit between, there's an unfavorable balance between the, in the sense that what Norway invests in is oil and gas, mining, etc., manufacturing. Whereas there's very little activity in the other sectors that are strong in Philadelphia, like technologies and healthcare products and such and such. So there's an unfavorable balance of trade between the Port of Philadelphia and Norway. And trade between Norway and the US appears not to be as active as in other sectors. For example, there's less than 1% of Norwegian companies that invest in the fields of computer and electronic products and chemical products, whereas the total goods exported in this era generates 24.2 billion. Among the top 5 export sectors, chemical products and computer and electronic products constitute 36.1% and 9.16% respectively. So large trade gaps might exist in several sectors between Norwegian businesses and businesses in Greater Philadelphia. This reveals a great investment potential for Norwegian businesses to launch new projects in multiple sectors in Greater Philadelphia. Research findings show that the opportunities to boost international trade between Norway and Greater Philadelphia can be identified in a couple of areas. Smart energy is one of them. Oslo has been recognized as one of the smartest cities in the world. And as far as that is smart energy and building innovation is concerned. And in Philadelphia, we have the Navy Yard, which has been designated as one of the energy research centers of the United States. So there is a potential good match to be made there. The other area that the project team looked at as an opportunity was the tourism side. And what has been detected lately for the past few years is that there is a direct correlation between the direct flight, whether it exists or not, between Oslo and Philadelphia, and the amount of tourism flow coming into Philadelphia. So there's definitely a area where we as a chamber are very interested in promoting Philadelphia and Oslo as far as having a direct flight service, because we see the benefit not for tourism as one thing, but also overall to increase the awareness of respective regions, Philadelphia in Norway and Oslo and Norway in Philadelphia, as far as a trigger and driver for business opportunities and business growth. So this was one of the two areas that the project team pointed out specifically. To receive open-ended feedback from NACC members and non-members located in both the US and Norway, the consulting team designed 3 questionnaires based on respondents located in both the US and Norway. Most of the Norwegian companies that participated in the surveys had extremely limited knowledge about Greater Philadelphia. Hence, they were thinking of Philadelphia as either something they didn't know about, and if they didn't know about it, it was for them an investment risk. Hence, what we have seen, typically Norwegian startups, Norwegian companies, when they look to the US, they look to these safe areas where there already is an established infrastructure, like in Houston, where there is about 200, 250 Norwegian companies that service the energy sector, in San Francisco, where you have structures and support systems around the tech industry, and New York, where you have that established traditional hub for Norwegian entry into the United States, with the major Norwegian finance companies established, and then so on and so forth. So it's very easy to overlook Philadelphia because Philadelphia is not on the radar. So what this starts with is really an awareness problem. And the survey that was done amongst Norwegian companies and such revealed a huge challenge there as far as unfamiliarity of Philadelphia. The other factor, or the other challenge, is that these companies, or these stakeholders, entrepreneurs in Norway, are very uncertain about what to do when they enter the U.S. market. And this is not just about Philadelphia. This is a general concern. So the really concerns around everything that has to do with how do I enter this market, how do I partner, who do I partner with, what are some of the concerns I need to have in terms of immigration, in terms of cultural language. The whole list is quite overwhelming from someone coming from overseas and don't really have a landing pad to speak of. So these are challenges that we would have to address here in Philadelphia if we were going to be competitive versus some of these other more familiar regions in the U.S. to attract Norwegian businesses. So what you often end up with is that there's really this need to cling to something familiar, and I witnessed this several times. The Norwegian companies, startups coming to the U.S., they hire a consultant, someone local, either someone coming from Norway has very little knowledge about the local market, or someone in the United States who has knowledge about the market but doesn't necessarily know the company, doesn't know the culture, and so on and so forth. There's definitely a need for a network and a support network in the U.S. NACC overall is not recognized as having this network. So this is a challenge for NACC across all our chapters, to be utilized for these Norwegian companies, these entries, for what we have, for the networks we have. It's not being recognized, it's not being used. So it's not the challenges for Philadelphia, it's a challenge for very many other regions, other chapters that we have. So So based on the research findings, the consulting team developed 3 recommendations and a series of actionable and achievable goals designed to be completed in 1 to 3 years. Leverage partnerships with key Norwegian organizations to increase awareness of Philadelphia and how it is an ideal U.S. landing pad. Number 2, develop NACC resources to help Norwegian companies to do business in the Philadelphia market, and create programs with a focus on social events to engage current and prospective members. To give you a flavor of a couple of these concrete initiatives that they suggested, one of them were closer cooperation with our sister organization, American Chamber of Commerce in Norway. We have some common members between Norway and the U.S. These members represent a great knowledge base about how to do business with Norwegian companies, how to do business, to bring also over businesses from Norway to Philadelphia and other places in the U.S. But again, there's a knowledge gap. AmCham and their members really don't know very much or anything about Philadelphia. And here there is an opportunity and a challenge to bring in this organization and help create a transatlantic cooperation to benefit both sides. We'll have the managing director of AmCham on the panel later, virtually from Oslo, so he will be able to also bring some further insights into this. Another concrete suggestions that the project team brought up was to look at universities as a platform, as a channel for expanding collaborations between the 2 regions. University of Oslo has a bilateral agreement with Penn State, with several colleges here in the United States, and Philadelphia region being the home of so many educational academic institutions. We are at one of the most prominent here today. Why couldn't there be a cooperation that we could enable between University of Oslo and a relevant institution here in the Philadelphia areas on their various levels? So that will be another challenge for the panel, perhaps, to discuss what type of collaboration, what type of benefit could come out of that. Another specific tactic that was presented was to do workshops, something similar like we do today when we kick off this report. Could we do regular webinars with specific topics that could be interested for these specific audiences in Norway that could address some of these fears and concerns about entering the U.S. market, for instance, law and regulations, tax issues, and such. Also, our members represent an enormous resource and knowledge base. Why couldn't we have our members be featured more prominently and talk about their experiences of entering and living here in the United States and doing business in the United States, and so on and so forth. So that's another specific concrete proposal. Education, young professionals, provide internship opportunities, create mentorship programs. Again, our member base represents an enormous set of knowledge for young professionals, representing a broad range of industries and experiences. Here, again, we could be a facilitator of such type of education, such type of programs. We could offer potentially scholarships to benefit exchange students. Again, we are back on the academic collaboration channel here that could be expanded. We are already very happy to collaborate with Temple University. They helped us with providing the resources for this project, this initiative, and also an intern that is helping us out today. So could we expand on that? That was one of the other proposals. So with that, these are some of the excerpts from the report. The report will be available in its entirety on our website, together with the recording of this session soon after today. So you can study it more in depth. But we are particularly looking forward to having our panel now discuss some of these topics a little bit more in detail. And I'll be happy to meet with any of you I'll be in Norway, typically in Norway at least a couple of times a year. We always welcome people, you guys from Norway, over here to come and visit us. So this is going to be an ongoing discussion. We're just kicking it off with some ideas, some strategies around how can we facilitate trade and relationships between the two regions. But with that, I will leave it to Tess to take us further to the panel section.
Great, thank you so much, Rhoda. And now we are going to start the panel discussion. If I could ask the panelists that are here in Philadelphia to come up to the high tops here and take a seat, please, wherever you would like. And this is the point where I'm hoping that the technology works for our panelists that are in Oslo and also in California. So I think the Temple staff are working on making sure that we bring them up on the screen. We are going to start with just brief introductions. So I would ask each panelist to take less than 60 seconds to just share your name and what you do, and if you would like to share your affiliation with the Norwegian-American Chamber or Temple, that's fantastic too. We'll start with the panelists that are here in Philadelphia. Aubrey?
Hello everyone, you've met me before. I'm Aubrey Kent, the Senior Associate Dean of STHM and the Fox School of Business here at Temple University.
Good morning, my name is Lauren Swartz, and I'm the Director of International Business Investment for the City of Philadelphia.
I'm Mike Burns. I'm a CPA with BDO. I retired as an audit partner on June 30 of last year, and the firm offered me a position to come back as a full-time business developer. So now I do a lot of this.
Thanks, Mike.
My name is Steinar Nerbovik. I'm a native Norwegian and love to build ships in Philadelphia. I'm the president and CEO of Aker Philadelphia Shipyard. Today, Philly Shipyard. You find me south in Broad Street.
Hi, my name is Helena Barachev. I'm a partner at Blank Rome. It's a national full-service law firm headquartered in Philadelphia, and we've been privileged to represent a lot of Norwegian businesses in China's company. My personal background is helping companies to form businesses, to negotiate contracts, and plan successful growth of the business.
Great, thank you everyone. And Jason Terflinger from Oslo.
Yes.
Would you mind giving
Hi,
us your...
can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Hang on just a moment. We're working on turning your volume up.
Okay.
Can you try again?
Yes, how's that?
Perfect, thank you.
All right, great, thank you. My name is Jason Terflinger. I'm the Managing Director of the American Chamber of Commerce in Norway, here in Oslo. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all virtually here today. I want to especially thank Tess for all of your coordination on this. I know it hasn't been easy. Frode, great work, and the Temple team. Just briefly, I could hear everyone in their introductions very well, with the exception of Yelena. I don't know if there's a microphone issue there, but thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Jason. We appreciate you letting us know. And Gruel, we would love if you could introduce yourself, please.
Yes, so can you hear me too?
Absolutely, you're coming through great.
Excellent. So my name is Gruel, or as I tend to introduce myself in America, Grow, because everybody here gets what that means. And that's exactly my job as well, as head of Innovation Norway in Americas. I'm located out of San Francisco, but responsible for all our 6 offices from Toronto to Rio de Janeiro.
Great, thank you so much. So we're going to start with the first question, and a couple of themes that the students identified were that there was a lack of familiarity or lack of awareness of Philadelphia on the Norwegian side of things, and also it was difficult to get Norwegian companies here. So I wanted to just start and ask the panelists, do you agree with what the Temple team found? And I know, Mike, you may have some thoughts on this.
I do. At a BDO, which is a global firm all around the world, We have 60 offices here in the United States. We actually have 66 offices in Norway, so see who's more important. We have a secondment program where it's like a student exchange, only they're not students. They're seniors and managers working in our practice. So we will like export to countries. Now, our people here, they usually want to go to an English-speaking country. But when they're coming this way, since English is spoken so much around the world, the incoming secondment people can be from anywhere. If they want to be on if the incomers want to be on the West Coast, they want LA or San Francisco. If they want to be on the East Coast, they want New York or DC, not even knowing about Philadelphia. So the way that we pitch this is we're between New York and DC, because we really do want to get these secondments in Philadelphia as when they go back to their native countries, they'll talk about Philadelphia, and in particular, BDO in Philadelphia. And since BDO is a global firm, we get referrals that way. But it's a sell job because they really don't know us.
Any other thoughts on these findings, that there's lack of awareness and that companies have a difficult time coming here? And Jason and Gru, feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of familiarity, if I may, is definitely there. Frode said very bluntly that AmCham members don't know much about Philadelphia, and very honestly, that's because their leader doesn't know much about Philadelphia, unfortunately. I'm embarrassed to say. I'm from Indiana, and we have a lot of members that are active, of course, all over the United States. But, predominantly, I would say Houston, Boston, D.C., San Francisco, New York. And we never have members kind of come to us saying, hey, Jason, where should we set up our U.S. business? They've already decided by the time they get to me. They're just looking for us to help facilitate. So we have to get to them before they make the decision. And I think there's a general oversimplification of what areas of the states cater to which industries, and we can get into that later in this conversation.
Gru, do you have anything to add to this question around familiarity and companies not being comfortable?
No, I think the report is absolutely right.
So I think we all agree on what the students said. Thank you, students. You did a very good assessment of what the situation was. So now that we agree on the findings, what thoughts do you have about the best ways to partner with some of these different organizations like AmCham and Innovation Norway? What are some ways that we can help to generate the awareness of Philadelphia and make it easier for companies to come here? Lauren?
Good morning. This is Lauren Swartz from the City of Philadelphia. There are a lot of tools in the toolbox to help combat this lack of awareness. I feel fortunate that the situation we have for Philadelphia to promote our city as a global business destination is really lack of awareness, not lack of a good product, right? Philadelphia is a great product when you think about marketing a city, the business assets that we have, the infrastructure assets that we have, and connectivity and different partners. And so we're facing the same challenge with cities and countries around the world where we can identify connectivity, but we need to overcome this hurdle of lack of awareness. And so some of the tools that the city has and that we try and promote are partnering with organizations like the Norwegian-American Chamber, coming to events like this, and we host companies all of the time and trade delegations. So if there are Norwegians or people from anywhere around the world coming to the city, we're happy to put together a sort of business development day for them and provide as much information as we can. From time to time, the city also does outbound trade delegations to certain markets, and that's a great way when, sometimes you have to show up and you have to go there and shake hands. And so when we look for markets where we can invest resources, the thing that we're looking for is partners. And we have a partner here at Temple University and with Frodo's group, and I think that some of the right ingredients are already on the table, and we have private sector partners as well that are already doing business in both places. And once we start to put those together, because we know that there's good opportunity, things start to flow. And then you get your first movers, and then the first movers become advocates and start to create that network, which creates a higher level of comfort for Norwegians or companies from anywhere around the world to decide to come here.
Lauren, thank you. And to continue with your thought about partnerships, Gru, I'm wondering if you have thoughts on this specifically and how we can increase awareness, and if you could talk a little bit about what Innovation Norway does so we can kind of think about how we can start to make some more of these connections.
Absolutely. But first of all, I would like to say that I think it's important to take one step back and ask, who do you have most correlating missions with? Because obviously all of us are part of trying to strengthen the business relations between Norway and the US in general. However, there is a big difference between working for increased value creation in Norway, in Norwegian businesses, and increased establishment from Norwegian companies in the US. It's kind of two factors in the same equation, but not entirely equal. So I'd say if your mission is to have more Norwegian companies established in Philadelphia, you probably have a more similar mission to Select USA than you have to Innovation Norway, to be honest. I do think, though, that we have complementary missions, but then we need to go one step further in analyzing the opportunities, because there are opportunities in health tech, in the health sector, in the smart energy sector, in the tourism sector, in the smart building sector, all over the world. So we see from our customers or the companies that we work with, that we need to identify the niches. Why are Philadelphia special? Why should you choose the healthcare system of Philadelphia to try and get into that, rather than Texas, for example, where Norway already has very strong links and a lot of Norwegian companies to piggyback on. So I think there are opportunities to collaborate both with Select USA and Innovation Norway-Americas that I represent. But we need to go one step further together to identify the specific niches where Philadelphia is the place to choose, not the second place or the third most interesting, etc. And then I think it's also super important, and I see you already do this, to collaborate with Norwegian companies or companies with strong Norwegian links in the region, because they have some kind of tie back to Norway, and they want to help, and they want to have more Norwegian companies come to the region, and they are role models, and they're easier to piggyback on. So that is what we've found in the regions where we have most success as Innovation Norway, is when we can piggyback on and collaborate with the great role models with Norwegian ties. They don't have to be Norwegian, but some kind of heart for Norway.
Thank you, Gru, for that thorough answer. And did we have someone else want to jump in? Jason, maybe?
If I may, Tess?
Aubrey? Yes.
I want to echo, I think, what all before me have said. Certainly Lauren articulated very well. Internally, Philadelphia has so many assets to be able to leverage, and in the last couple of years, from an external image standpoint, the city has really put itself in a very good light in terms of its ability to host and execute large events. Looking at it from our perspective at the School of Tourism here, looking at things like the DNC, the upcoming NFL draft, and on a more global stage, the World Meeting of Families and the Papal Visit. You know, there's been a lot of buzz around Philadelphia as a destination, not, as Mike was saying before, the perception that it's just a convenient place to come if you're headed to DC or New York. It has its own assets and desirability as a destination. But to Gro's point, which is very well made, when you're looking at a tourism destination, that is very different than making a business location decision, an investment decision. And so second best isn't good enough. Well, yes, we want to be on the East Coast in the same conversation as the Bostons, the New Yorks, the DCs. We need to identify those things that differentiate Philadelphia as that number one destination or investment opportunity, not merely part of a group of investment opportunities. And that, I think, is the challenge. And as the project team identified, certainly awareness and perception is the first step for that. But even among those who, I believe it was the 40% who had some awareness of Philadelphia, their awareness was in no way deep or rich or detailed. And so taking it to that next step, I think, is the challenge. And the challenge, to meet the challenge, we begin with what we're doing here, which is partnerships. Because while Philadelphia can identify the assets it thinks are desirable, we have to get intelligence from the other side. What do other enterprises, other entities, in this case Norway and its business community, look for? And then where is the match? And that's the stages that we are into now. And so I think everybody's on point, and it's really the next steps that are where the excitement lies.
Absolutely. So I think what everyone's kind of reaching or going to is, what is Philadelphia's value proposition as a city? What makes us different and unique? And what are the most salient points that we need to realize to attract companies here? So let's talk a little bit about that. What does make Philadelphia attractive to other countries? And I know we're speaking specifically Norway, but let's just talk from a more general perspective. Why should someone come to Philly? I open it up. Lauren?
This is my full-time job to give this pitch, so I have to go first. No, the three things that we start with, and I started joking, but that is true. I meet with companies, delegations, business leaders, politicians, diplomats from around the world constantly and have this conversation, which is an honor to be able to do that, to represent the city and to try and grow our international relations, which then we really work hard to direct towards business development. That's good for both countries and both partners. We can't make this a one-sided equation and be successful. But the 3 points that we start with, if I had a little pitch card, so location. Between New York and DC, it's a blessing and a curse. We have to promote why it's such a good thing. The second thing is the cost differential, right? We're not competing with Kansas. We're not competing with rural America. If you want to be in a big city on the East Coast, that's our niche. You're sort of competing with California in a way, but that's also really far away if you're coming from Europe or, India or something. So it's the strategic location between the regulatory and the financial capital of the U.S. And the fun location, and I won't get into all of that now, but then it's also the cost differential, and the third piece is the talent and the workforce. And I noticed there were a lot of notes about, like, how am I going to find talent here? Well, with 100+ universities, 500,000 college students, and 60% of the students that graduate in Philadelphia intend to stay here. So we have the highest percentage of millennials, which is not a bad word or a bad thing, just because I happen to be one, but millennials bring talent, they bring innovation. We have a very educated population as a result of this trend. So those are the 3 factors that we can play ball with right away. But then you have to get sector specific. And we've been working with the Brookings Institution to identify what is the pitch. And I've learned from other cities around the country that are all trying to do the same thing with the guidance of a Global Cities Initiative from the Brookings Institution. You have to approach this with the concept of, which of the world's problems is your city solving? You can't be like kind of good at something and attract an international business to come or to start trade, right? And so the things that Philadelphia is really the best at, where you have to come here to be part of something, part of an ecosystem, is in the life science sector. And that's a very broad term, right? Medical care, certainly. But when you get into private business, we really look at advanced medicine, advanced therapies, precision medicine, gene therapy, cell therapy. There's a lot of nuance to that, but that's where things are happening in Philadelphia that aren't happening anywhere in the world, or they're happening with partners around the world because we're at the front end of innovation. It's a very, very expensive, very niche type of industry to be at the front end of. You know, Milwaukee has water technology. Everybody really needs that. I'm sometimes jealous of Milwaukee. But that's one of our key selling points. But things branch out of that. So digital health and smart cities and smart technology, and some of those things interplay together with the health of our communities and city. So life science focused on that, advanced medicine. The second topic is technology, tech companies, and a lot of that is focused back into healthcare, digital health, and also smart cities, smart technology solutions, and advanced manufacturing. Because of our long history of manufacturing, we still have the infrastructure to manufacture a lot of things. We also make ships and helicopters in Philadelphia, which most people find surprising, but we're really good at manufacturing, and we've got the distribution network and the infrastructure assets to move products around the country, and you can reach 70% of the consumers in Canada and the United States within a one-day transit move from Philadelphia. The people from the port will correct me if that's wrong, but I believe that's the stat. So that's our very shortened pitch about why Philadelphia is an attractive place and what sectors we feel like we can really compete in.
Thank you, Lauren. And for our representatives from Norway, we will get back to your reactions to this in just a moment, but I just want to give other panelists here in Philadelphia a chance to kind of put their 2 cents in about why Philadelphia is an attractive place to be. I don't know if Steinar or Yelena, either of you have thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to support what Lauren is saying, because Philadelphia has a fantastic product. And for me, being a shipbuilder, when the Norwegian company Kværner established themselves here back in 1997, the Navy Yard were only doing conversions and repair work for ships back in the 60s up to the 90s. And the Navy Yard was closed then in 96. So when the city went out together with PA to find new investors, they ended up with the Kværner company in Norway being the 4th largest group of ship builders at that time. We changed name to Aker. We are still here. It's a fantastic place to live. It's a fantastic place because we are skilled workers and we can invest here. So if we can preach about this and spread the gospel to the native Norwegians so they really understand what kind of fantastic place this is, we need to start with this, of course, spreading the gospel here, and I need to do mine and make sure that we still have 1,200 good jobs for Americans down in the Navy Yard.
Thank you, Steinar. So Jason and Gruel, you can see there's quite a few passionate Philadelphian Norwegians.
And I am an Eagles fan.
We just did a big. Sorry, Aubrey. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one other point to add to Steinar and Lauren's points, which is there's certainly the business case that can be strongly made. But when considering, say, locating a branch or a headquarters somewhere, anywhere, there's also the livability factor, because then you have employees and their families. And as somebody who has moved his family to Philadelphia and is not originally from here, there's an incredible livability factor here when you compare it with some of those other competitors we've talked about, specifically New York and Washington, D.C. Lauren mentioned the cost advantage, but that's not just about a cost of doing business. That's a cost of living advantage here as well. So you can live very well here comparatively. There are incredible cultural opportunities, arts opportunities. There are incredible educational opportunities. So if you're talking to an executive and he or she is talking just about the business case, you can also say, well, the couple or dozen or hundreds of employees who you would locate here have tremendous living opportunities in terms of where they would live, where they would raise their families, where you could make a life. There are very few places that I can think of that within a 2-hour radius, not only are you proximal to major financial and policy-making cities, but you're close to the ocean and the mountains. And so the human capital side of it, I think, is underplayed somewhat as well. And as someone who's lived it, relocating here from elsewhere, it's a definite competitive advantage that I'm not sure Manhattan or DC really have.
Thank you for adding that piece in. I agree.
Quickly echo that as Helena. I came to Philadelphia in 1996 to go to law school. I grew up in Russia, immigrated in 1995, so I was fresh off the boat when I came to Philadelphia. It's an incredibly welcoming city. When I graduated, I could have worked anywhere in the country, and my husband and I chose to stay in Philadelphia and bring up our sons here because it's a wonderful city. It's a welcoming city. And the communities that you go to will open up their arms and will be very nice to you, and your kids will adjust very well here. So it's a very important thing at a personal level.
Thank you both for bringing the human element to the description of Philadelphia. I appreciate that. Jason, I'm going to just ask for your reactions to some of our Philadelphia commercial here. And earlier you mentioned that many of the AmCham members, yourself included, don't know a lot about Philadelphia. So what's the best way for us to communicate some of these wonderful things to potential investors in Norway?
Well, I want to commend you all. It's very informative, and you're doing an excellent job selling in the city here. So hats off. Just a few comments, if I may, Tess, to my counterparts on the panel. Aubrey, first off, I made a special note about your executing large events. And just off the top of my head, you know, every year this Select USA event in D.C., I don't necessarily see any reason why that would have to take place in D.C. every year, and that would be a fantastic opportunity for your city. Maybe you've already worked on that or attended that in the past. Steinar, I was very happy to hear your remarks, especially with regard to talent. If I'm going to be very blunt, people are aware that Philly shipyards is doing well now. When it first started a while back, there were rumors of labor issues, having to retrain the American workers in shipbuilding is the blunt version. But I'm glad we've moved on. I think for people that are especially interested in different areas of the United States, that played a lot in the media, and the perception was that there were those challenges. So I think getting beyond that and getting the message out, and I will now obviously be a part of that positive message. I think that's a good thing. And then the just in general, Tess, back to your question, you have, you know, in different parts of the state, you have people that are familiar with Norway, and you know, I'm speaking specifically Minneapolis, the greater Midwest, and you know, that's both a boon and can be a challenge for those places in terms of kind of attracting new business and new ties with Norway. So you guys have a relatively clean slate, and I think that's a positive thing. You can kind of create your own messaging and build on the successes that you've already had there. But if I can come back to some of what you said a little bit, sorry, Lauren, specifically, you've been working with this topic for a long time. Are there European countries or international business sectors or clusters that you've had a special kind of amount of success with over the years? Are there any lessons learned from our neighbors in Europe that we can kind of emulate here?
Sure. Thanks for the question. If you look at Pennsylvania as a whole, the foreign direct investment statistics, to try and get that down to the city level is very difficult. Maybe somebody at Temple could help me with that. But statewide for Pennsylvania, the massive majority of our foreign direct investment and business attraction comes from Europe. UK is number 1, Germany is number 2, you hop over to Japan a little bit, and then you come back to France. So, and that has to do with the long trade ties and the direct flights. We're American Airlines European hub open to Europe. So we have this long connectivity and also the cultural affinity. Philadelphia feels very much like a European city. I moved here from Copenhagen. I'm an American from Minnesota, so I've got lots of Scandinavian in me. And the long connectivity between Europe and Philadelphia has continued to bear fruit in terms of business relationships. and trade. And the sectors that we see from Germany, no surprise, it's a lot of manufacturing or distribution and sales for manufacturing that's done in Germany that eventually turns into manufacturing here. In the UK, we're seeing a lot of tech companies and financial service companies, professional services as well. In France, they follow pretty much those same lines, but I'd say we see more of our French companies being in that life sciences and healthcare and biomedical sector, which again, all three of those play into where Philadelphia has strengths.
Thank you, Lauren and Jason. Hopefully that was helpful, and we're happy to continue to talk about this going forward, I'm pretty sure. Gru, do you have any thoughts or initial reactions to the attributes that make Philadelphia especially attractive in our minds?
No, I'm sure it's right. I've actually never visited myself, but I really like listening to Lauren and Steinar when they go into the details of why they find it should be attractive also for others. And companies such as Aker is obviously, it has a name in Norway, it's easy to relate to, and it's trustworthy. So it's a good role model for to showcase for other Norwegian potential investors. And also, when you now have enlightened me on the niches where you are very strong, I think it's the more concrete you can become on the needs that you see, that brings out the opportunities for the Norwegian companies, the better it is. Because most of them would probably not choose Philadelphia just because it's a nice place to live, but it has to be a concrete business opportunity. So, for example, if the city has some open innovation challenges, or the healthcare system has some specific needs that they want to have solved, then we could together go more pinpointed out towards the Norwegian ecosystem of companies to solve those needs, so that we know that there is a match between both what the Norwegian companies can deliver and the needs that the American or your society has. And it could be in any sector as long as there is a win-win, basically.
That's very helpful, Bruce. It sounds like we've done a decent job at right now determining some of the macro factors involved in bringing Norwegian companies here, but we now, next step sounds like, need to provide a more detailed, specific information around which industries might be a good match for Norwegian companies. And then when you add in the livability element, I'll call, that Aubrey and Yelena brought together, it sounds like that might be a good match. So we appreciate all thoughts on this topic. I'm just going to switch a little bit and move to one of the other recommendations the students made. And they mentioned the importance of developing partnerships between universities in Norway and universities in Philadelphia. We all know we have many. So I'm just wondering if any on the panel have thoughts on that recommendation, and I'll go to you first, Aubrey.
Yeah, thanks, Tess. Certainly education, as mentioned before, is one of the biggest industries in Philadelphia, in the greater region. There's more than 100 educational institutions. I'll speak to Temple specifically. Temple has many reciprocal relationships with universities around the world. And I believe maybe it was Mike mentioning this challenge before, is one thing that Temple has identified as a challenge with these international agreements and exchanges of students and faculty is creating two-way traffic. It's very easy to attract international students to come to a U.S.-based university. Temple's no different. It's more difficult to get students, faculty, to go out into the rest of the world. And so, we have many of these exchange relationships, but it's definitely been a lopsided affair. So what are to your point, Tess, what are the value propositions we can put together to encourage two-way benefits? Because all of these exchanges are very important for growing what the students identified in terms of awareness, in terms of information sharing, best practice sharing, and on both sides, it creates a much more enriching and diverse classroom learning environment. So they're very, very valuable. And especially, it's more than just a brochure. If you go and live somewhere for a week or 10 days or a semester long, you create an affinity for that place, so that when you're moving up through your career, or you become into a decision-making position, you then have in your mind an idea of the landscape. So it's certainly a way to break down this unknown challenge that the project identified, and just a way to enrich and educate all the way around. So Norway has some certain advantages, advanced educational system that would be more of a match towards what a US-based institution would have. There's less language culture barriers than there would be in many of the places where we have exchanges, especially in Asia, that has a large contingent of international students who are attracted to come to America to study, but it's less attractive for American students to go to such a different culture from a language and living standpoint. But the value of these exchanges are very large, and you know, we can build on things that we already have in common. Like I said, large you know, understanding of the world from similar perspectives, institutions that are built in much the same way, and you know, other points of commonality that we have. One of the things that I was going to mention before that can facilitate some of these partnerships is looking just at what cities have in common to be able to attract this two-way traffic. I don't know how many of you know, but aligned with what our school does in tourism is that Philadelphia last year was the first ever American city designated World Heritage status by UNESCO, and Norway, Bergen, and other cities are designated these World Heritage cities. And so actually later in April, I'll invite you all, a little plug here, we have a meeting of Philadelphia business leaders along with the tourism industry, to see how can we leverage this new brand that Philadelphia has that is a truly unique American designation, to be able to partner with these cities all around the world who already have this status. And so certainly Norway's not alone in having cities. Bergen's the first one that comes to mind, but I'm sure it's not the only World Heritage designated city. And so partnering with cities, institutions, universities, for example, companies that have already things in common helps to ease starting those conversations.
Thank you, Aubrey. Other panelists on the Philadelphia side, thoughts about university collaborations? I'll turn it over to Gru and Jason. What are your thoughts on potential university collaborations? It's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, Gru, if I may, just very briefly, we work with several universities here, and in a nutshell, it's great to have these kind of collaborative kind of platforms on paper, but when it comes down to actually, you know, success, it depends on if there's a solid project, and if it makes sense, and if you know, the University of Oslo has a specific initiative with a given university in the States, that's great. But you know, on paper, the fact that we're friends, you know, I think BI, another university that we work with, has relationships with 20, 30 different U.S. universities, but how many of those are actually live? So I think we need to make sure we're kind of working with real world projects.
Jason, can you just speak up a little bit or get closer to the microphone? We're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Apologies. I just, in a nutshell, we need to make sure that the universities are actually working on real-world projects, as opposed to just having these things on paper, these relationship kind of declarations on paper. So.
Gru, do you have anything to add?
Yep, I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and I so echo what Aubrey said. And I think I have to repeat myself when it comes to specifying niches. again, because there are more universities and interesting educational systems in Norway than Oslo. And like in the U.S., the largest Norwegian universities and educational systems, they go to the universities that they know the best from the U.S.
Right.
And if that is not based out of Philadelphia, then you're not top of the list. But if you find that specific niche and you find that same specific niche in a Norwegian university, then that is probably a better link. And what we've seen work the best is word of mouth. No rocket science there. So have the students that you already have from Norway preach your gospel back in Norway and recruit, maybe do a startup-y campaign and use the startup tools to recruit, to have your alumni recruit new students to come to your region.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate Gru bringing up alumni. I think that's very important. Temple, as far as I'm aware, Penn State, as far as I'm aware, do not have active alumni associations in Norway. University of Pennsylvania Wharton School does, and those are a lot of well-placed people that can preach the gospel, so to speak, and I think they should be tapped into, and I would encourage Temple and other universities to activate those alumni associations in Norway.
So thank you both for those excellent recommendations, especially around word of mouth and alumni. Very good information for us to have. We really appreciate that. I'm just going to move a little bit into the recommendation the students made that when Norwegian companies think about coming here, or when they come here, there's some hesitation for whatever reason to come to the States. So just want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges those companies might face, and then, or the perception of the challenges they might face, and then some of the resources that we might have here in Philadelphia to help mitigate some of those fears. And Yelena, I know that you have some thoughts on this, so do you want to share your thoughts on some of the challenges companies might think they're facing?
Sure, thank you. A lot of challenges that I deal with are obviously on the legal side, and companies that come here, the first thing that I hear, oh my God, how are we going to cope with this legal system? It's completely different. We're going to be screwed up here. But the reality is that with any problem, you try to solve it piece by piece. You first analyze what the needs of the company are. So do you need some real estate work because you're going to rent a space? Do you need some tax work? Do you need advice on which company you need to form, whether it's going to be a corporation or a limited liability company or a partnership? What makes sense for you? Do you need some advice on intellectual property side because you need to protect your trade name, or you have some copyright issues? So once you start figuring out what the needs are, it's easy to find a solution. You can't solve the problem by saying, oh my God, I'm going to throw out the white towel because I can't deal with this legal system. You need to understand what it is. And at some point, this system will start working for you. Because, for example, one of my clients is suing another company, and I hear a lot of complaints about the litigation system that we're afraid if we come to do business here, we will be subject to a lawsuit. Possibly, but there are ways to deal with that. But on the other side, you can also be a plaintiff. You can sue somebody if things don't go well. So one of my clients is suing now a carrier that botched their shipment of life sciences products, pharmaceutical products, and they want to recover whatever they lost as part of that botched shipment. So it depends on which side you are. You either like this system or you don't. If you're concerned about your liability because you will be selling something here, there is a concept of indemnification. You put indemnification provisions into your contract that stipulate how risk is allocated. So if something goes wrong, if the other party breaches the contract, who is responsible for that? So it's not only in courts that these issues are resolved, there is a contractual way of dealing with that.
Thank you, Yelena. Lauren, do you have additional thoughts on this, since I know you have experience in this area?
One of the first conversations we have with companies is the need for an attorney when you come to the United States, which is a really no offense, terrible way to start a conversation. And then we tell them they need a really good CPA. And then they need maybe a separate immigration attorney if they're not working with a large firm. And then the dollar signs or the kroner start to roll through their head and they think, why would I do this? Well, the reason why is because you want to access the U.S. market, right? And we're fortunate enough in this country to have this massive market. So the risk is worth the reward when you have the right product and the niche is lined up. And so for any company going global, that's why they're coming to the States, is to increase their sales volume and to expand globally into the market. And you just have to accept that there are some significant legal differences, and the world of litigation is really terrifying to people who come from countries where they don't have that type of system. And the fact that you need to work with an attorney, a tax advisor, a CPA, but from the moment you start thinking about coming to the States, because that planning can actually be a huge advantage to you. And the reason why this country flourishes economically in the midst of this complex legal environment is because you can make the system work for you. And whether that's good or bad, I won't comment on publicly on the microphone, but the point is that if you use it to your advantage, it can actually help you grow really quickly. And one of the pieces that we talk about is that we were in Germany, we did a trade delegation to Germany, and all the German companies were saying, well, I only call my attorney when I'm in trouble. And we try and really reposition the concept of that relationship in the United States, that these people are advisors. Yes, you have to pay them, and yes, they're expensive, but your CPA, your tax advisor, your attorney can open doors for you. They can open business development doors for you, networking doors for you. They are an advisor and a partner, and it's confidential. And that's something that is often quite different from other countries. And we have to introduce that concept gently from the very beginning and get the company comfortable with it. Because if they don't believe and refuse to engage with counsel on certain things, they will find themselves most likely in some difficult situations that will be much more expensive to remedy later on, and they'll lose the advantage of some really good planning that often has to be done before you arrive in the country.
Very important point, and thank you very much for saying that, because as a transactional attorney, I always say that if I did my job right, my clients don't get sued, right? Because the idea is, especially in regulatory businesses, to navigate the system and to explain to them what they should do to comply. Calling an attorney when you're in trouble, it's a great point, but I mean, it's a little bit late. You should be calling people beforehand to understand how the system works.
So thank you both for that. So I'm hearing some kind of things that might be considered scary around lawyers and tax attorneys. And so I guess my question is, what resources do we have here in Philadelphia to, again, help mitigate some of those fears? Do we have people that can help companies when they're coming over here that maybe didn't take all the steps in the right order?
So Tess, if I may, we talk about it a lot at the meetings of the Norwegian-American Chamber of Commerce. How can we welcome companies here? And at the Chamber, we have a wealth of expertise on the accounting, legal, business side. So if companies come here, there is a network, as we were saying, that we can help them and we can advise them on that. And in terms of prices, I mean, all this can be worked out, because when we work with companies, and we're a very large firm, so we service multinational companies, giants of businesses, and we service startups, because we understand that in order to grow our business, we have to invest into smaller companies and help them grow. You can't only take companies when they're at the top of their game, if you will, when they're well-developed companies. You have to invest in them earlier. And we structure our prices accordingly. It's not free of charge, but it's definitely not something that we will charge Stein, for example, because it's a well-developed company. So there is an understanding of differentiation and a different approach that we should apply.
Thank you, Yelena. So it sounds like although there are some of these obstacles, if you will, there are resources here to help navigate you through some of these questions and obstacles from a NACC perspective and also a City of Philadelphia perspective. We're starting to get a little bit close to the end of our time here, so I want to just quickly turn it over to Jason and Gru, and just regarding this question, ask you if you think companies have additional concerns other than the ones that we identified.
Gru, this is what you do every day. So
yeah, so what they ask us is definitely visa, how to get a visa, and who to engage with to get that. And then the other compliance issues follow, more like how do I register, depending on my strategy of establishment. What do I need to register? What do I need to report? And I think maybe the most important thing that we see in that respect is to be transparent on the main steps and also the typical average pricing to have a good lawyer on that. And then it's network, because most Norwegians come here without a network. And especially in this area, it might be the same in your area. The network is very tied to where you have your education from. So if you have your education from Stanford, you're kind of already trusted. And it's much easier to get into the large corporations or to meet potential customers and get in business dialogue. So how can you help them get the right business network, or gain the or help them introduce them to trustworthy potential partners, and not only service providers. Service providers are also very important, but the end customer as well for B2B companies. And then I would have to say that I think it's important also for a big share of the companies that we work with to talk about the local code of conduct. And it goes from everything to how do you dress, to how do you, to simple things like how do you approach a person, how do you introduce yourself, is it okay to reach out to a person you don't know, how do you do it, say thank you, things like that, easy things like that, but they vary a lot. Even within, I mean, America is, I don't know how many countries, but just to see the difference between New York and California, California, or San Francisco, for example, it's very different, and even within different businesses in San Francisco. If you go to Google, make sure not to wear a black suit and a white shirt, but if you go to Cisco, make sure to wear a black suit. So it's the kind of the local code of conduct is also important.
Cool, thank you. That was a really great list of things that I think probably expanded our horizons regarding some of the challenges that Norwegian companies might face from a cultural perspective, not only the U.S., but then you're right when you break it down into the different regions that we have in this country and the cultural differences. So I appreciate that. I want to stop briefly and just find out from Jason if we have any texts or questions from the virtual attendees. Have any come in yet, Jason? But yes, Frode, if you have a question, yes, let me just give you the mic.
Yeah, so there's one question that came in. So the question is Norway alone in these questions and issues? I would argue that in every Nordic and Baltic country, they face issues, the same type of issues. Should we not look for cooperation here as well? And I would address that to the panel, but maybe Lauren, do you want to tee off that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would say every Nordic and Baltic country and almost all other countries, except for maybe Canada, which is still a different country, but we're so close and so familiar. There are fewer barriers, but these issues come up with every single country and company we deal with. They're very consistent, and I think that cooperation makes sense. We can't say, well, every country faces these issues, so all the countries will work together. I think where there's synergy between sector, geography, culture, like there are in the Nordics and Baltics, it makes a lot of sense to try and work together, especially from these smaller countries where you've got just, 5-6 million people in a country, and there's 6 million people in the greater Philadelphia region, to pool their resources or the solutions and the mapping of how to solve these problems and share them among those countries to form a partnership and share resources so we can move more quickly and be more successful. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Lauren. I want to, Frode has another question.
A follow-up, actually. If maybe Gro would care to comment on it a little bit, because I know, Gro, I know you have been involved, or Innovation Norway have been involved in as a driving force for Nordic cooperation in the U.S. Maybe you would talk a little bit about that, what your experience has been as far as the Nordic House, the Nordic Innovation House has been so far?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I think it's very relevant. And our experience with collaborating on a Nordic level has been 100% positive. I think it's kind of painful to say that Americans can't differentiate a Norwegian from a Swede, but then on the other hand, it's not painful at all, because it makes us stronger. We come out as more interesting because we have more companies, more high quality companies. We have a bigger network together. So here in California, we started out 3 years ago to do everything we do pretty much on a local level in Nordic collaboration. So whatever we do, we invite in all the other Nordic countries, and we represent each other. And it has worked out really well for us. We've had 400% growth in the customer base that we work with. So we have about 4,000 visitors just in Nordic Innovation House, which is a small co-working space in Palo Alto outside San Francisco a year. So it's pretty extensive. And the idea of the Nordic collaboration has now been taken further to New York, and we're opening a shared facility and also collaboration in New York in May. So I think whatever you pitch to Norway can be easily pitched to Sweden, and we're happy to help you in that.
Great, thank you, Gro. We are actually running out of time, so I'm going to state that if anyone has additional questions for the panelists, hopefully they have a couple of extra minutes to stick around after the event. We really don't have time to open it up to questions right now in the live audience. However, I did just want to share some next steps with you. Again, thank you for attending. After this event, we will be sending you out information to access a link to the full report. If you're interested in this topic, I encourage reading it. It's written very well and very interesting. And then we will also be putting together a more of a one-page infographic that details the highlights of the report. And I think some of the information that we learned from Gro and Jason today, thank you, regarding what you need to see regarding niche investment opportunities may be included in that infographic. We really appreciate all of your feedback regarding some of these ideas today. Gro and Jason, do you have any additional parting comments?
I mean, yeah, just going forward to keep the activity level up or increasing, I do think we need to focus on finding these champions, both via alumni kind of associations and at companies that are active both in Norway and Philadelphia and the neighborhood already. Exalta, FMC Chemicals, Unisys, Aker, obviously, the list goes on. So I look forward to working to help facilitate some activity there and build a group up of interested people. Frode, I want to commend you on your work. And Gro, I want to publicly challenge you, and partly challenging myself, to visit Philadelphia. I think both of us are long overdue, and would like to line that up, you know, and if it works, and if it's smart, we can coordinate that for later this year.
Absolutely.
Well, we would love to have you. So we challenge you too. Thank you. Do any of the in-person panelists have any final comments?
This is Mike Burns. I just want to thank the writers of the report. I found it very well done, and I particularly liked the practical suggestions that were made, which are something you can plug in almost immediately.
Agreed. Thank you both for coming. Any other comments from the panel? Ruda? All right. Well, thank you. That concludes our event. We really appreciate it and look for more information from us and keep coming back to these events when we have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess.
You get afterwards? Yeah, they did let me out of the